Welcome to Detonation Point. I'm your host, Matt O'Neill. I was with the U.S. Secret Service for 25 years and retired as the Deputy Special Agent in charge of the Cyber Operations part of the Criminal Investigative Division. In Detonation Point, I'm going inside the fight against cybercrime, hearing directly from defenders in government, infrastructure, and enterprise who are racing to stay ahead, because cybercrime isn't slowing down, and neither can we. Welcome to Detonation Point, presented by Elastio. Welcome back to Detonation Point, presented by Elastio. This week we have Ron Green joining us. Ron is somebody I've known for a long time, and I'll have Ron give a quick intro into his career. But the most important thing you guys need to know is Ron is also from Philadelphia and also an Eagles fan. And Ron went to a school that was literally 100 yards from where I grew up. So Ron, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, it's great to be here with you. I'm surprised it took us this long to get together here.
So, Ron, you grew up in Northeast Philly, man. How does a kid from Northeast Philly find its way to West Point and to the Secret Service, and to talk about the journey?
Sure. Yeah. And it, all of this wasn't actually planned. None of it was planned. I wanted to be a cop because my dad was cop and all of his brothers were cops. And all I heard throughout my life were these cop stories. I'm like, I want to, enjoy some of those stories. I want to make some of those stories on my own. And I'm like, Dad, I want to be a cop. He's like, no, you got to go to college. So yeah. I had an uncle that worked at West Point. So he was what they call a gold coat. So he made sure all of the computers were running and the systems were operational for the cadets and for everyone else on post. And so I'd gone up, I hung out with him in the gold coat lab. That's where I played one of my first video games. It wasn't Pong. It was this Star Trek game that was like ASCII characters, and it was entertaining for me at the time. Kids today would not know what the hell was going on. But I saw West Point, watched the parade, and I'm like, Dad, this is where I want to go to school. He's like, what? And so I was really focused in high school about getting there. So I this is what it takes. This is what you got to do. And so I was doing all these things to get there. And what I think was really helpful for me at Northeast High School was I got to be first string, not because I was this great athlete, although I could hit people. My grades. So I'd start as a defensive tackle, but because we'd go through one grading cycle and the grades would knock a lot of people off the team, then I was on the kickoff return. I was on offense, defense. I never left the field. I was on the field the whole time. Went to West Point, figured, look, my career is going to be Army. I even thought first 3 years of West Point, I'm going to be infantry. The day we went to go pick branches, it was cold as hell. It was cold and it was snowy, and I'm thinking, I could live in a box. So I went air defense. I had a great time with my first platoon. I was an air defense officer, but a communications platoon. And the best job I ever had was being a platoon leader, bar none. But what I found out is I like working with troops. I didn't like the staff stuff. I didn't want to be battalion staff. I didn't want to do any of that stuff. So I told my dad I want to be a cop. And he's like, no, you got to go federal. My dad's aversion to being a police officer was just the street violence. He didn't want me to get involved in that kind of stuff. And he'd seen agents, he'd worked with agents before. And he's like, you should do more of that. A quick story. While I was in agent training, I was in a hotel. I'm still just in training. And we were staying, I think it was just off Pennsylvania, at this DoubleTree. This is the hotel that we were at. Yep. I'm playing chess with the doorman, and a guy comes in and he throws a bag on the counter and he goes, okay, ladies, put the money in the bag. And he's got a gun. He's holding the place up. Oh my gosh. So they're not moving fast enough at the register. So he puts the gun on the counter and then he starts helping him move the money into the bag. And I'm thinking, I bet I can get to that gun. And so I did. I grabbed the gun and I put my arm around him and I'm like, I got the gun. And then he broke off from me and then ran out the door. And I ran out after him. Then he jumped in the car and took off. So I got back inside. One of my classmates came in. He's like, what's happening? And the cops were there. And I don't know when you went, but we always had to go to Beltsville in 2 vans.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So
same.
The classmate who was there with me through all this with the cops, we get in the van the next day. He tells all the people in the van. So I'm explaining what happened in the van. We get to Beltsville, and then the other van guys talk to my van people, and then I had to explain it again. And then they tell the instructor, and then I had to tell it like again. And the instructors were all great about it. And they're like, yeah, that's exactly how we want you to behave. I was getting a lot of kudos from my classmates and stuff. My dad, I told him, and he's like, what? You didn't stomp the shit out of him? Like, for my dad, you beat the crap out of somebody with a gun. You beat them down because you don't know what else is going on.
Yeah, right.
That's Philly cop thinking. So,
Wow.
yeah, it's just different perspective of what should have happened.
Yeah, right. Everyone thought Ron, like superhero, grabbing this. And your dad's like, yeah, you only did half of it. You didn't
Yeah,
do.
no, you should have beat the crap out of that guy.
Yeah. It reminds me of a story that when I first came on the job, so I came on in 98, June of 99, I go to a detective bureau in Connecticut, and they said during roll call, and so one of the guys in the office came from that PD, and he's like, hey, listen, like, you're green. I'm 23 years old. I don't know anything about local policing. He's like, just spend 2 weeks with this detective bureau, and you'll be well worth your time. So I go in, and it's afternoon roll call, and the sergeant says, all right, guys, remember, if they run, they go to the hospital. And everybody's like, yep, we got it. And I remember getting in the car going, what happens if they're not hurt? And the guy's like, what? I go, what happens if they're not hurt? I don't understand. If you run, they go to the hospital. I get you run, you catch them. Why are they going to the hospital? He's like, no. You don't understand our code here in this town. Everyone knows if you run, you're going to the hospital. The bad guys know it. The good guys know it. And it was just table stakes. This was their expectation. And it was really like an eye opener. I'm like, they didn't teach me this in training. There's this other code that goes on. Yeah, my dad was started in Philly with the Secret Service, and I asked him, like, hey, what did you guys used to do to watch the class 3s that we would call them, like the guys that had made a threat and stuff? Because we used to have to sit on them, right? So wheels down is 2 p.m. We'd have to sit on them at 6 a.m. and basically all day. And my dad said, yeah, the Philly cops would just grab them and take them to the train station and throw them on a one-way train to Atlantic City, because you knew that they're not coming back for the next 6 hours. So it's like, I'm not watching these guys. These guys are gone. I was like, well, that's ingenious. We never even thought about that for a second.
That's funny. Like, the problem with this, Matt, is we could go on. Like, I have a funny LA story with a class 3 that's out there. We could just do this all day.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and people are going to like, I have no idea what they're talking about, but we do.
Talking about?
So I made so much money off of the class 3 in New Haven that I wanted to name my son after him, because the guy made a threat like 20 years ago. He said no threat to anybody, but we had to be there at 6 a.m. until wheels up for whenever the president was going to go to Chappaqua, which was all the time when it was President Clinton. So did your interest in computers start because of your uncle at West Point?
So in middle school, they let us program on Apple computers. And it's about the time that I was going to West Point too.
Okay.
So I went to a middle school that was focused on engineering. I used to take stuff apart. My dad's like, you take stuff apart all the time. You'd probably be a good engineer. So I went to middle school that focused on engineering, and we started programming. When I went to West Point, we were the first class to be issued computers. And they were 386 machines. They were like yay big, thick, with monochrome screens, but they were cool to me.
Yeah.
I wrote a program for my fluids engineering course. They wanted us to engineer the best set of pipes to move water from one area to another to deliver a certain amount of pressure. And there was no one set answer. I made a program that would figure out the best answer, and it would do it by 1 foot increments. It would measure each set of pipes, change them by a foot, and then give you the pressure results. And this thing ran for 3 days and ran for 3 days.
Wow.
And, it was doing all this calculation. And anytime one of these solutions could deliver, it would print it out on a dot matrix printer. So my roommates and I, for 3 days, you'd sleep. And then all of a sudden you'd hear, but I printed it all out. And when it was all printed out, you could see which one delivered the best. So I had the best solution out of any 1 foot incremental change for this system. I got an A+.
Did that turn into something that you would do regularly? Like, oh, wow, I figured this out, so I'm going to basically, because obviously that's in the early days. That had to have been in the late 80s, early 90s, right? I mean,
I was always goofing around with computers. Like people would buy video games and we'd have to figure out how to crack them. And so we get different tools to crack the games, to break the copyright, to replicate the games. So that's my little criminal background.
So then you leave the Army and you join the Secret Service. Was the Secret Service because they were the first to hire, or?
I first went to Johnson & Johnson at the time.
Oh, that's right.
I sold Suture for 9 months.
Okay. I bet you
and
learned
then
a
I went
lot.
to Secret Service.
Yeah. What did you learn in that 9 months that took you for the rest of your career? Was there anything in particular?
The biggest thing I got because I was a suture salesman. So I would go into surgery. Part of the interview process was going into surgery, see if you would pass out.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I saw a quadruple bypass during my interview process.
They let suture salesmen in surgery? Like you're still trying.
Oh, I was in.
Wait, you're trying to sell while the surgery's going on?
Yeah. And as a part of the sales training, we operated on a pig. We did like gallbladder and intestine. We actually did surgery on a pig with the sutures so that we could get a feel of how the suture would work and feel to the surgeon in a bloody field. And so when we would go into surgery, we could talk about the knots that you tie, and we have an idea of what they're feeling. And so it was it's pretty intensive training.
I guess I'm probably like most listeners going, the sales cycle was literally in the operating room.
Yes,
like why would they have these conversations long before, like in the preparation? Like, I got to know. And what if you're not there? How do they like, what are they going to do then?
It does start outside the operating room.
Okay.
Like even if you're in the locker room and with one surgeon, you meet another surgeon, and like there were a urologist or they're an orthopedic surgeon, you know what kind of string or suture works in those different situations, and you talk to them about it. And you use information-based selling, which is what they taught us. Figure out what were the things that were of concern on their mind, and then you'd say how your solution would make sure that those things that they were concerned about, not a concern. All you needed them to say, hey, the next time I do X procedure or something like that, have them put that on my card. So then you'd tell the nurse, and then you'd go into surgery with them for that date for when they did that.
Were there competitors in there? Were there like 3 different?
Not at the same time.
Okay. Wow. That's just wild to me. Is there a lot of money in suture salesmen?
So while I was still in the Army, I had started the application process for the Secret Service, and it took me 2.5 years. And I sat on the shelf for a year. So I was a suture salesman. And then Secret Service said, hey, we now have a spot for you. You ready? Hey. And so my commissions from my sales made up for the lack of money that I earned as an agent. When I started as an agent, I was a GS5.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. One of our ID cases was a former Marine who was medically discharged for mental issues, and he would get separated from his disability checks. His disability check was more than my paycheck.
Oh, dear gosh. I can only imagine. A GS5. I think it's criminal that they hired guys at the time. I was lucky to come in as a GS7 in New Haven, but there were GS5 starting in New York in the 90s. I don't know how. I mean, they had to get multiple, roommates and whatnot. So what does better in introducing yourself to women? An Army officer, a Secret Service agent, or a suture salesman? Is it because I like the suture salesman? Like, that is a hook. Hey, what do you do for a living? I'm a suture salesman. What? Yeah, I'm the guy. I can sell anything.
The problem with when you say the background together like that, it's not really believable.
No,
it becomes
it's wild.
You're you're a West Point grad and a Secret Service agent, huh? That's just there's a Thurling. He would introduce himself as a Snapple truck driver.
Okay, yeah, and people would be like, "I know exactly what you do immediately." There's no more questions to be asked. You deliver Snapple.
I deliver Snapple.
One of the funniest things I saw, there was a guy that was in my class that we were in St. Simon's Island, as we would all go when we're at FLETC for training. And one of the guys, I overheard him talk to a woman and said that he was the tail gunner on the space shuttle. It's the most ridiculous thing. And he said he was from the South, and he's like, I'm not particularly bright, but if they buy that, then I know they're on my level. So that was his weeding out people that were above his station in life. So I always thought that was really funny.
My West Point classmate, his fiance, so she was riding in a car with us, and I explained, look, when we joined the Secret Service, I had to change my last name to a color. So that's why it's green, and like other guys are like brown or pink, or like we had to change our names to colors. Like she was, yeah, that sounds plausible.
She watched Reservoir Dogs or played Clue. I don't know, one or the other. So did you apply to other agencies as well?
Yeah. Well, so while I really wanted to go to West Point, I applied for Air Force and Navy. I was really hoping to get into West Point. So I applied for the Bureau, ATF, and the Secret Service. So I got the most interest fastest out of the Secret Service. And so I just stuck with that. I had one of my classmates who wanted to join a federal agency, and he was making progress in the Secret Service and the FBI. And I'll tell you what he said. You tell me what he did wrong. During the interview process, as it was closing, the bosses of the officer like, we really like you. We think that you're a guy that we would bring on board. And he said, yeah, I've also applied for the FBI. I'd like to see if I could get that first.
Oh, yeah, you're out. You're out.
He was out.
You're out immediately.
They're yes. Like, yeah, he was out immediately. They called me up and they're like, no.
Yeah. Somebody that I'm very close with, who's a postal inspector, always said, and I don't know if this is necessarily true. And as you know, my wife was retired FBI agent and worked with many awesome retired and current FBI. But he would break it down to say there are people that want to be federal agents, and then there are people that want to be FBI agents. And a lot of times they're not the same. I don't know if that's true or not. I think it's a good line. Yeah. So, and you hit it at the right time to a degree, because electronic crimes was taking off.
It was just starting off. So when I joined, there were 11 agents, like Fidel, Fortuno, Mary Riley. There were 11 agents, and they did all of the electronic crime stuff. They traveled all over to the country handling all this stuff. So Mary's first pitch to me was, Ron, there's 11 of us. We travel all the time, and everyone is kind of mad at us because we're late at turning our reports in because we're traveling all the time. We buy our own equipment, and we trained ourselves to do this. Do you want to join us?
Oh my gosh.
I said, no.
Yeah, that sounds terrible.
I don't want to do that.
Yeah, I don't want to do that. As a GS5, my own equipment.
Then it was not like 6 months later. She's like, okay, all right, let's try this. We started a program, and we're going to train 24, and we're going to equip you, and you can stay in your field off. You want to do that? Like, oh yeah, I'm in.
So that was the first electronic crime special agent, ECSAP?
Yeah, that was ECSAP. And then I remember the first ever ECSAP meeting, and you remember the Motorola flip phones?
Mm-hmm.
She's got a Motorola flip phone in one hand, and she's got a laptop in the other. And she's like, one day, they're going to put these devices together and make it one device. And then we're going to use something called the internet. And we're like, no, you blaspheme. No way.
Right.
What is this?
No kidding. She was a pioneer.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, she really was, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you were in Charlotte? Is that where you were? What office?
No, I was in Phoenix.
Oh, that's right. You were in Phoenix. Yeah. Okay. So would you cover everything that was in Phoenix, or basically everything? Like, how did it work back in those days? Because not every office had an ECSAP.
No, I covered all of Arizona.
Okay.
Keith Schwam was in New Mexico, and we worked together on stuff. Yeah, I had all of Arizona, and then sometimes we would travel to help other guys in other offices. It wasn't traveling like the 11 did. You know, we'd do a little traveling every now and then, but it was not nearly as much as what the other 11 did. And you just think about the travel that we did anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Like, could you imagine having to travel for all of those forensic cases and protection?
So they didn't cut you a break? You did it when you were not on the travel rotation?
Yeah, we still were on the travel rotation. We didn't catch a break. So from Phoenix, I went to headquarters, and I was in the electronic crimes. Well, first I started in financial crimes. It was financial crime before it was, what did it become?
They merged financial crime division and counterfeit division into the criminal investigative division.
Yeah, it became CID. Yes.
Yeah.
But I was there before it became CID, and I was a region agent.
Okay.
Yeah. And I wasn't yet in the electronic crimes branch, but then I went over to ECB.
which is got to be a fascinating time. I'd love to go back and kind of understand how different the world was, because probably at the time it was not live capture, I'm guessing, or was it?
No,
It was all dead box forensics.
it's mostly dead box forensics, but we did throw up a couple packet capture machines on, like we melted one. I forget whose case it was. Like if I could remember whose case it was, you would know them.
Yep.
But they needed a PCAP machine and an ISP because it was like bulletproof hosting. There was a bulletproof hoster that they're trying to work against, and they had the U.S. attorney doing the Title III stuff. And so we sent them a machine, and it melted because we weren't network engineers. We didn't bother to engage with network like we did a lot of stuff cutting edge on our own. This is what we think we need. Well, it's apparently not enough.
Right. I mean, sometimes I think back of those days and kind of miss them, because it was just this new world where the ingenuity that you mentioned back in West Point to figure out that engineering problem is you were using the same part of your brain to do that years later. And to me, like when things become so bureaucratic where people are just like, all right, I'm going to use my Cellbrite and I'm going to do this. You lose that because now you're no longer thinking as much analytically as more of like process. Is that fair?
No, I'd say that's true, but I'd say there are safeguards that like agents today would not do some of the stuff that we did. Like there was a bank that got taken out by an insider, burned down their infrastructure. And the bank's like, hey, you guys want to help us stand this stuff up? Okay. We'll come in and help. We'll restore. Like, can you imagine that today?
I know.
The agency trying to help a bank recover.
I remember even in 2000s, say before 2010, I would go out and find a victim merchant of a point of sale terminal hack, and we'd say, hey, listen, we want to basically do PCAP. We want to capture the traffic for 3 days. And then once we figure out what the problem is, we'll remediate everything. And so then you're going to be good to go. And just think about the liability. Like it's insane. But this is before, these third-party forensic firms and Kevin Mandiant hit it big. And like, it was just like, no, we got you. We'll take care of it. And you know what? By and large, these were small shops, or some of them had, I remember a movie chain up in New England that had like 50 stores. And I was not an ECSAP person, but I had guys that did that. I was the one that was like doing sales, going to the CEO saying, hey, listen, just give us a week. Let the government, let us see everything for a week and we'll figure out what your problems are. And they're like, yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, it was funny. Like so me and Pete Gannon wanted to go into ECSAP. Right. This is like 2014. And so they gave us all the study guides. So they used to send everybody down to do like a quick course in A+, and everybody would pass because you go down there for 2 weeks and they would have to take a test. Well, they stopped doing that. And they gave us all of the materials. CID did. And this is part of my hatred for management still to this day, even though I became it. And so I spent 4 months studying this packet that was like this thick, and I had notes and I was ready to go. I show up to take the test at like one of these testing centers, and the information that they gave me was from a previous test that was no longer tested. And I failed. Like I knew 3 seconds in that I was toast. Like nothing that I had studied for was on this test. And so I never became a ECSAP. And then when I was like sort of the DSAC over the program, it always stuck with me, which was like, man, you guys really, like, it was me and Pete both. We called each other afterwards. Like, how'd you do? He's like, I did terrible. I didn't know anything. I go, yeah, neither did I. We completely wasted 6 months. But
I didn't know, like, there wasn't a test when it was, this is the guy that knows the most about computers from our office.
Yeah. When I was in New Haven, there was a guy that was already an ECSAP person. And remember back in the day, all of the old timers would call it ESCAP. Like they would always pronounce it wrong. Oh, you're the ESCAP guy. And then they would be like, we need a real agent. We don't want an ESCAP guy. I'm like, well, first of all, you're saying it wrong. Second of all, like you're going to need these for the cases that we're working. But these guys were old school, man. To them, working a case was trash pulls, surveillances, flip a guy. That's it. Like move on. And, we were combating guys They, as you know, were now overseas actors, and it was a different world, and they just were kind of caught up in the wash. I was talking to somebody the other day just saying how lucky I was and you were to come on at the very beginning and see it through. It's almost like, to a degree, the people that were born in 1900, that their life started in horses and then they got to see jet travel in their lifetime. Like, we saw that in a very condensed 25 years where the financial crime, the world changed. So after the service, what got you interested in going into banking?
What got me interested in going into banking was I'd shot somebody at 9/11. Oh,
Not on 9/11.
no,
Okay.
not on
Okay.
9/11. So while I was in Phoenix, I was working a counterfeit case.
Okay.
And you know the story, the one where my informant was getting run over and I ended up shooting a guy. My wife, while I was an agent, she got to take pictures with Bill Clinton and George and Barbara Bush and Bob Dole. She got to participate in a lot of photos and got like her friends. They, whenever somebody came to town, I could move to the front. She's like, "Oh, this is great." Then I got into a shooting. She's like, "What the hell?
Yeah.
What's going on?" And then 9/11, for almost 72 hours, I went in the office and just stayed. Like, we just
Right.
stayed. And before someone said, "Hey, we need to work a rotation so guys aren't just working forever," before I got back home. And it was like, yeah, you might want to think about something else for a career field, because the service is a machine. And when I was interviewing, I got a lot of the, well, you're going to miss this in your kid's life. You're going to miss that in your kid's life, blah, blah, blah. But then after the shooting and then 9/11 and all that stuff, it's like, well, okay, I see what you're saying. Do something that's less hazardous and I'll be around longer. So then I went into banking.
So what on 9/11, for those 72 hours, what were you guys doing?
Yeah, we sent all the non-1811s home, all the non-gun carriers home, and then got out the long guns. The first family moved to the basement of headquarters, and we stood post.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And it was like just the radio traffic. There's a rider truck. There's a rider truck.
Yeah.
Go down and beat the rider truck.
Oh my gosh. My 9/11 story was a little different. I was working 12-hour midnights at the Clinton residence in Chappaqua, and nobody was there. The president was in Australia. The first lady, or now she was a senator, was um in DC, and I was working the 12-hour midnight shift. So on the morning of 9/11, I went to the hotel in Terrytown and went to bed. My oldest daughter was 3 weeks old, and so it was my first week back, and I remember 9/11 was a beautiful day, not a cloud in the sky, low humidity, absolutely gorgeous, 70 degrees. I went to bed, I woke up at 7 at night, and you know how, like, when you work midnights, it was like the second day was the hardest? First day you're jazzed up, so I just crashed. I woke up, and I had absolutely no idea that anything happened. So yeah, just crazy. Like, I was literally probably the last guy in America to know, and then I show up, and it was some special officers at the front, and they had MP5s out, pointed at my car, and I'm like, "What is going on? Like, what are we doing?" And they're like, "They're going to attack the house. Al Qaeda's coming for this house." And I probably shouldn't say this, but I was like, "Who cares? Nobody's here. Like, let them have it. It's an empty house. I'm not dying over an empty house. Are you kidding me? My daughter was just born." Probably not a popular thing to say in the agency,
but the job is protecting the people, not necessarily. Like, yeah,
it was an empty house. The president's, 10,000 miles away, and the first, like, nobody's here. And now you're just scaring everybody as people are coming up that cul-de-sac that your guns drawn on them that whole time. So I got to ask you, how did your dad feel? What did he say to you after the shooting?
So the thing he told me after the shooting was, look, they're going to come and they're going to talk to you, and it's going to feel like they're accusing you. Just tell the truth. Just go through what happened and you'll be okay. I had inspection and then Phoenix homicide. First, it was inspection, came out. They were asking me all the questions about the shoot, and then Phoenix homicide. And it did feel like you're going through the process, because potentially it was a bad shoot. What was cool, and he just passed, Dana Brown was the AD of investigations. And he called me and said, "Ron, it's a good shoot. We got your back."
Yeah, that must have been a weight off.
Yeah, it was huge. Yeah, but my dad's like, just tell your story, tell the truth. It's going to feel like they're accusing you, but just go through the process.
Right. Oh, that's great advice. Yeah. And it's also interesting that he didn't want you to become a city cop because, and then, it just speaks to, like, no matter what you do in law enforcement, Yeah, the
Yeah.
odds of being in a shooter are much lower, obviously, in federal law enforcement, but you just never know when something happens. At some point, I'd love to, because Ron, as most of you know, is a guru in all things cyber crime, cyber security, and whatnot. But I wanted to spend the next 15 minutes, and we're going to talk about. So, Ron, obviously, you know, you had an amazing career both in law enforcement, then also through banking, and then ultimately as a chief security officer of Mastercard. And now we're partners, which is just a treat.
You know what's funny is we just started talking and on stories, and at the beginning you said, "Hey, just introduce yourself." And
Yeah.
we didn't even thank you for finishing up on my story,
Yeah.
but we didn't get that far.
No, we'll do that. I don't mean it to be a yada yada yada.
No, but it's cool. Like I've known you for years, and like we can just go into stories,
Yeah.
and it's cool working with people you like.
Well, absolutely. It's a gift. When I retired and I started 50 Consulting, I talked to a guy and he said, listen, you have the luxury now. You're not working at a big institution or whatnot. You can have a policy of no a-holes. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, yeah, you could just implement a no asshole policy. If you're an asshole, I'm not working with you. Make it that easy. And then it just eliminates all of that stress. And so I've always thought about that. And I think that the people are happiest are the ones that actually have the flexibility to do that, to say, look, I'm going to spend my life now. This is a second act. And you spend your life working with people that you enjoy spending time with. And I think we're both fortunate in life that we're able to do that. And it's a real gift. One of the things that I hope to in this podcast series is even just give folks a flavor of specifically, like a lot of people who listen are in federal government or have just left federal government, whether it's in the military or in federal law enforcement. And a lot of times people come out because they've been institutionalized for 25 years to thinking, I can only make this much and my skills are only this deep and I don't know what else I can do. So from your perspective, you know, from West Point to Suture Salesman, which is awesome. I love that. To law enforcement, to, you know, Bank of America, to MasterCard, you've seen it all. If you were advising somebody that's got 6 months left in government, then say they're Secret Service, FBI, what would you tell them would be the things that they should be really stressing when they're going for an interview in private industry?
First off, what you do is unique by mission. But if you break down what you do into subtasks, the little building blocks that make your job possible, like you have to influence people, you have to come up with a plan. Like there's little building blocks. You take those building blocks, you kind of move the mission aside a little bit. Those basic building blocks are the same building blocks of lots of other corporate jobs. If you can just see that you're doing a lot of the same thing that someone else is doing. I love the podcast that you just had. I think it was just
just
a few
recently.
weeks ago. Yeah, just really recently, where you said someone said they'd never sold before. But anytime you're presenting a case, you're presenting an idea, and you're trying to sway someone into agreeing with your idea, you're selling. You've thought of what the key points are. They're going to win that decision from the person, that decision maker that you want to sway in your direction. And it's like the Suture sales thing where they taught me information-based selling, which was talking to doctors, figuring out what things did they not want to occur, and then how does my solution prevent those things? And then delivering an argument that says, these are the things you're concerned about. Build rapport, find out what's of concern to them, and then tell them why those things can be mitigated with the solution that I have. It's the same thing that I would go through with suspects where it's like rapport. What are the things you don't want to happen? Well, if you work with me, these are how I can help you reduce or prevent those things. So you've gotten to a place where you told me these things. Now you confessed, and we then can move on to the next thing where I can actually help you help yourself, right? And it's the same thing when you go to present a business case for millions of dollars to build your security program. These are the things we don't want to happen here. Here's how the plan that I have will lessen the likelihood that that's going to happen. And here's how much that costs. We want to reduce that likelihood, right? So help me do that by approving the money that I need to execute. It's the building blocks of this. It's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's just different missions. As someone looking to transition, first you gotta feel that, and then as you're looking at roles, well, before you even look at roles, talk to people you know that are in that field or that organization. Use the network that you built over time to give you insight to get you in a better place for that position. Then get the job spec. On LinkedIn, keep the federal title, but on your resume, adjust the title, because the hiring manager might not make the connection that what you do is in line at all with the role that they have open. You are selling yourself. You got to sell that you would be a good fit for this role that hiring manager has open. So understanding the thing that you did, that title, how that kind of maps to the role that you're applying for, make those adjustments so that it's easier for them to understand why a special agent can do the same thing that a suture salesman can do. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I think that is wonderful advice. And you actually gave me that advice when I was still with the service. And you said, talk to as many people as you possibly can and ask them direct questions, such as, what is the quality of life that you have? What is the culture of your organization? How do you feel valued? How much money do you make? And I did. I asked all of those questions, and it really informed my future, because I realized in many instances, wait, some of these roles don't pay very well at all, but some of them are a lot more. And it's not just about pay, but it's about what kind of influence do I have in an organization? Does an organization care about security? Am I constricted because I came from federal law enforcement to be in security? And the answer is no.
No, not at all.
And then to your point about making a business case, really important to understand you're there at a private industry to help them make money or prevent them from losing money. One of the classes that I took, which was at Carnegie Mellon for the CISO certification, I never wanted to be a CISO. I'm not qualified to be a CISO, but I understood the business part, and I didn't know anything about business, but that was fascinating to me, is understanding that what you're trying to do is mitigate risk, but then also not be seen as a cost center of an organization. Like, for example, when I was with the Secret Service, nobody talked about CapEx and OpEx. No idea. If I didn't take that class and I went into consulting and somebody says, oh, what's their CapEx? I'd be like, hold on a second, let me Google that. I don't know. But once you figure it out, okay, now I understood my CapEx was I went to the Treasury Forfeiture Fund and I sold an idea to Irina Deline, who was like a mentor to me and like building stuff. But that's getting CapEx. And then like, what does it cost to run something? They don't teach you that stuff. You know it, you just don't know the terminology. So getting people to understand that part, I think, is really important.
And talking to your network, it can help you make those connections between what it is that you did to what it is that they do.
Yes.
A couple things that I find it hard for people is, one, they just go in kind of cold without doing all of the research, which can make the conversation kind of clunky. And then two, if they do get in, like you were in a role that the agents that you worked with, you'd prepared to take a bullet for them. Like you were going to do incredible things when it hit the fan. Same thing with the military. The esprit de corps is way different in the corporate world, but you can do things to look for other guys who were prior military or prior enforcement. You're not alone. One of the things that I found in all over the financial service sectors, there's plenty of FBI, there's plenty of Secret Service, there's plenty of NSA, there's plenty of CIA, there's plenty of DOD. Like they're all over in this industry. And just by talking to people about their backgrounds, you're going to find that. And then you get a little camaraderie there. And just because that company didn't have a culture like where we come from, you can also kind of influence that culture, because belonging to something or believing in the great mission is something that a lot of people find value in. They just don't, no one talks that way. They talk bottom line and everything. But if you can make it so that the team talks about the mission that they serve, no one's getting a flag with the corporate symbol on it.
Right.
No, that's not going to happen. But you can get a lot of camaraderie, a lot of partnership, a lot of willing to spend the late hours to get the job done, to get the mission done.
There's something to be said about building high-performing teams and being part of them, that you learn more about that than you do on almost anything else. And they can exist in private sector, they can exist in public sector. And when I look back at my career, being part of those teams is the thing that I remember most. And in many instances, I don't really remember who is the leader, because in a high-performing team, everyone is, right? And everybody is rowing in the same direction. And it is a pleasure to go to work with those folks. And then if you don't have that at your organization, it's the responsibility of you to build it. Even if you're a GS 13 or a guy with 5 years on the job, wherever you are, uh, taking personal responsibility and having that will. You can tell, like we worked with people that they just were built a little different. Like I remember on the detail, there were a couple guys that like they elevated everybody because they did everything right.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, real quick in the last couple minutes, what would you say about the value of your network? As you mentioned that, I find it to be the most valuable thing, but especially looking for roles. Like, is your time better spent applying for 1,000 different jobs on LinkedIn and spending thousands of dollars on a resume that somebody else wrote? Or is it more having those conversations, letting people know that you're available? What would you say?
I'd say your network, the most valuable asset for, especially as you get to more senior roles, it's your network. Because when you're working with people who are thinking about talent all the time, you actually might not be looking for the role, but because they know you, they might, hey, I got this role. And I've had it brought to me a couple of different ways, which was, hey, Ron, I'm looking for somebody that does this. Do you know anyone? And it's like, holy crap, that's a really cool job. I'd like to do that. And that is how you might see some really appealing roles come. The network is something that is easily missed. You meet people, you do a transactional thing, and then you move on. That's not how networks work. You talk to people, you get to know them, and you actually care. If you're not a person that cares about other people, networking might be hard. I'd say get that Carnegie Mellon book, How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yeah.
But if you actually care about people and what they're doing and share some of what you got going on and hear what they got going on and actually listen, you can create really great networks that are supportive. What's great about the networks that we have is we all have this one mission, which is we want to protect the infrastructure, right? And so you're trying to build networks that, hey, I know these people over here, something bad happens. I know how to get a hold of those people. I can help them. They can help me. We can all help each other. That's why you're not thinking about the jobs that you might get. It's more about what you can do together, because when we work together, we can do much, much more than we could alone.
I also think too, like for me, the personal satisfaction that I get, and I wouldn't say selfishly, but kind of selfishly, in helping people land roles that they want. I love it. Like there is a rush to seeing other people succeed. And I felt that as a supervisor when guys made cases and I knew how hard they worked. There was a certain thing, and I don't get that anymore because I'm not working cases, but I've been fortunate enough to have a lot of our support folks at 5.0 go to full-time roles. And that's what they want. And the client's happy, they're happy, and you played a small role in that. There's a lot of people that want to do that and they want to help. It's just having the courage to reach out and say, hey, I'm looking, please keep me in mind. Do you know anything? What do you think I'd be good at? And things like that. And that's how things are made to me. And you're also much more likely to land in something that you'll be there for a long time.
You're much more likely to end up at a place where there are people that think like you, that are like you. There's a higher likelihood that the culture will match what you are.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Ron, I really appreciate your time. Can I ask you a favor to come back and talk cyber?
Anytime, any topic.
Somebody's going to say, you had Ron Green on it and you didn't ask him a single question about cyber. And I'm like, well, listen, there'll be time for that.
We barely got through the bio.
I know, but I think it's important stuff and people need to hear it. You know, it's a pleasure to work with you. And thank you, Ron, for joining us. And we'll also talk Eagles football next time. But
yeah, we'll do that.
The wounds are still a little raw from this year. So anyways, thank you everybody for listening to this week's Detonation Point presented by Elastio, and we'll see you next week.